As long as we live in the standpoint of the external personality, the ego consciousness, we look to external rewards and satisfactions, and the fulfillment of ambitions and desires, as the central objective towards which we orient our actions. It is only when we begin to feel and appreciate the emptiness of these transitory enjoyments, and we start to feel like there must be a deeper meaning to our lives, that we begin a process of inward reflection, a seeking for something that provides us a context for everything we experience. In some cases, the sense of emptiness of the life satisfactions is not the initial driving force. There may be some kind of setback, disappointment, failure, that leads to doubt, questioning, or even a form of depression. In other cases, there may be a serious illness or what is known as a near-death experience that causes an individual to look inside. For Prince Siddhartha, a turning point came when he was exposed to the pain and suffering that people experience in life. He had been kept isolated and sheltered to prevent him from seeing the reality of life for most people. At some point, he was brought into a direct experience of pain, suffering, old age, and death. And when he learned that this was the actual human condition, he experienced a transformation that led him to abandon his life of luxury as a prince and take up the spiritual quest, eventually reaching a stage of enlightenment as the Buddha. The great yogi of Tibet, Milarepa, learned black magic to call down a revenge on his aunt and uncle, who had appropriated the accumulated wealth his father, who died after a serious illness, had left for his mother, his sister, and himself, after they had assured the father of their uprightness and support for the family. Afterwards, he suffered intense pangs of remorse, with the feeling that he had left a black mark on his soul, and the only solution was to achieve liberation in one lifetime, to avoid being reborn in terrible, anguished birth as karmic recompense for his acts. Once an individual becomes aware of the soul, he begins to appreciate that there is a true individuality, a spiritual being that is behind the actions of the soul, which the Sanatana Dharma calls the Jivatman. This leads to spiritual practices to shift the standpoint away from the ego to the jiva. The third step is then to widen the spiritual being to encompass oneness with the entirety of the creation and the divine purpose in the manifestation. Sri Aurobindo observes, quote, "In the spiritual knowledge of self, there are three steps of its self-achievement, which are at the same time three parts of the one knowledge. The first is the discovery of the soul, not the outer soul of thought and emotion and desire, but the secret psychic entity, the divine element within us. When that becomes dominant over the nature, when we are consciously the soul, and when mind, life, and body take their true place as its instruments, we are aware of a guide within that knows the truth, the good, the true delight and beauty of existence, controls heart and intellect by its luminous law, and leads our life and being towards spiritual completeness. Even within the obscure workings of the ignorance, we have then a witness who discerns, a living light that illumines, a will that refuses to be misled and separates the mind's truth from its error, the heart's intimate response from its vibrations to a wrong call and wrong demand upon it, the life's true ardor and plenitude of movement from vital passion and the turbid falsehoods of our vital nature and its dark self-seekings. This is the first step of self-realization, to enthrone the soul, the divine psychic individual, in the place of the ego. The next step is to become aware of the eternal self in us, unborn and one with the self of all beings. This self-realization liberates and universalizes. Even if our action still proceeds in the dynamics of the ignorance, it no longer binds or misleads, because our inner being is seated in the light of self-knowledge. The third step is to know the divine being who is at once our supreme transcendent self, the cosmic being, foundation of our universality, and the divinity within, of which our psychic being, the true evolving individual in our nature, is a portion, a spark, a flame, growing into the eternal fire from which it was lit, and of which it is the witness ever living within us, and the conscious instrument of its light and power and joy and beauty. End quote. Reference: Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, the Psychic Being, Soul, Its Nature, Mission, and Evolution, Section 4, The Psychic Being and Sadhana, pages 101 to 102.